Hey there.
What you know how to do when you call me. But it's
Oh,
okay. I'm
sorry.
reading stuff. Nah, you're good. You're good. We almost done for a few minutes about what were we doing again? My mic.
um, we were doing worship, and then we were gonna do the off-topic segment because you had asked me what books I had been reading that were unrelated to the faith stuff.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. How about we pick up from there?
Okay, so this week I read some Star Wars books. Dawn of the Jedi, Into the Void, predominantly. That's the longest one that I read. There's also a bunch of short stories related to Lost Tribe of the Sith. The weird thing about those is they're a series of short stories, and as a whole, they're actually big enough to be their own book. I think I'm about halfway through that one.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Dawn of the Jedi is interesting because it's it's a good story, but the way that they portray the Force and the Order of the Jedi before the schism that led to the Sith and the Jedi is I'm not a fan. Um, and it mostly because it seems to be of the whoever wrote this was of the mind that the Force should be in balance when you're practicing both the light and the dark. And I don't like postmodernism creeping into Star Wars because that's largely where that comes from. I feel like. Um, I always liked the interpretation in Star Wars where the Force is brought into balance by you know being at peace with the Force, not carry, and that practicing the dark side creates inherent imbalance.
Yeah, I believe that was George Lucas's original intent in regards to the nature of the Force.
Right. I feel like the prequel era and kind of changed that. Um, And I think I don't. Admittedly, I haven't watched enough Clone Wars, the CGI series, to know if they also do that there. I've heard about the Mortis arc and how there's elements of that in there, but again, I haven't seen enough of it to say one way or the other. But I'm actually at the point where, in addition to the Bible, which I'm reading front to back as often as I can, I'm also on a mission to read every Star Wars EU book or audiobook that I can get my hands on in chronological order. Right now, it's about like 256 albums long.
Wow, that is huge.
Yeah, the playlist I have on my phone says it's 1,426 hours, 4 minutes, and 3 seconds.
Well, looks like I got some catching up to do.
Yeah, and I've still got stuff that's being added in here because there's a YouTuber who I follow, and he's creating audiobooks of the books that never got audiobook adaptations. So that list is going to keep on growing.
Oh
Honestly,
boy.
with how the list keeps expanding, I feel like Sisyphus, where I'm pushing this boulder up a hill. I'm climbing up the timeline only to have to restart every time the new new book comes out.
Give me a new audiobook.
Yeah, new audiobook comes out. Because no way I'm reading all that. The only way I was able to complete the Bible was because of its narration feature. Even stuff that I like for the most part, I struggle with reading. I actually bought a hard copy of a Star Wars book that I was interested in back in like 2020 or 2019, and I never read it. I just it just sat on my shelf, unfortunately.
Do you still have it?
Yeah, I do.
Oh.
There are 14 books that I have. I've read half of them. I don't know if I can get myself to read all of them. I might. Those were a Christmas present from my mom, and they are out of circulation. You cannot get hard copies of these anymore. I don't know where she got them, to be honest.
Wait,
Um,
which books were these?
they're the Young Jedi Knights books. They're the books that go over Jason and Jaina Solo's time at Luke's Academy on Yavin 4. Um, and they're out of circulation. They're out of print even. They
Really?
so far they are Legends content that has not been re-released. And that was and believe it or not, that was the Young Jedi Knights arc was the last arc to take place um, before the Yuzon Vong arc. There's like a 10 or 15-year time gap between those two arcs. I'm trying to remember. I think that the Young Jedi Knights book were written in like the mid '90s to the late '90s, and then in 2000 or 2001, that's when Vector Prime was released, and that was the first of the Yuzon Vong books.
I wasn't sure how much Disney was like reprinting of like the older stuff because I know there was plenty of stuff before the Disney days, but
Yeah,
I know they also.
they're re-releasing some stuff, and it seems to be like a trick. They seem to be like drip feeding it, like Nintendo does with video game updates. But so far, what Disney has done with like re-releasing Legends material, they seem to be doing the popular stuff first. There is a petition going around to get some of the more niche stuff reprinted and back into circulation. But so far, I think that there's just so much content that maybe they just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Also, I mean, you combine it with their High Republic initiative, that could be taking a lot of their time too.
Well, they are re-releasing the X-wing books. They're actually doing that still, which is good. There's a lot of so far the only audiobooks that are that are so far the only audiobooks of the X-wing books are abridged. And to give you an idea of what abridged Star Wars books look like, one of the Yuzon Vong books that's like 20 hours long got cut to 3.
Whoa,
Yeah, it's
that is
bad.
quite a drop.
Yeah, there's actually a reason that the Yuzon Vong or the I think it's called the New Jedi Order books is the official name for that arc. A lot of people hate the abridgment of the New Jedi Order books. Um, I happen to have audiobooks of every single one in that series. There's a Discord server I'm on where people are like sharing links to personal Google Drives and Ice Drives of of the unabridged audiobooks that we've collected. I actually dropped a link in there to the Legacy of not Legacy of the Force to what was it called? Fate of the Jedi, because believe it or not, those ones on Audible are unabridged. I guess because they were more recently written. Um, they were probably. I think that around the time. I think at a certain point they stopped abridging them because fans weren't happy with that. Unfortunately, unabridged versions are only being released by Disney now. That's kind of up to Disney for what they choose to release that in unabridged form. And thankfully, they actually have done that with the X-wing series, so they might do that with other series as well.
Yeah, hopefully they do, especially there's a demand for it.
Yeah. That's why while I don't like giving Disney money, I will give Disney money for unabridged Star Wars audiobooks from the Legends continuity because you got to reward positive behavior there.
Yeah, I would say yeah. There's two ways to get a company to do what you want. The first is just to boycott them when they don't give you what you want and you buy something else instead. The second is to reward them by purchasing the good stuff because that's going to tell them where they should go.
Absolutely. Doesn't always work. Case in point, Nintendo is rather notorious from learning the wrong lessons from their failures.
I
Um,
mean, we're talking about the same Nintendo that tried to sue a guy for using cheat codes in his NES game,
oh my! I always forget about that, but yeah, no, they did that. Um,
and they lost.
Rightly so, and thank God for it because it was this the guy who was using Game Genie, or was he using like was he using a peripheral, or was he using like
Yeah, he was.
exploits?
Hold on, he was using Game Genie to modify. I believe it was Mario 3, so that he could get like infinite one ups. And
Oh, Rick, you still there?
sorry, I was chewing on some chicken.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm still having dinner. I'm almost done, but like, you see me getting quiet from time to time. It's because I'm eating. I can't speak.
I'm impressed by the fact that your mic doesn't pick that up. My mic has the opposite problem where it's so sensitive it hears me crunching on potato chips or soft foods
Yeah,
like an apple.
Well, the cool thing of my headset is if I want to talk or if I doing something, I could just lift it up and you'll be able to hear me. For example, did you hear what I just said like 5 minutes ago?
Um, I didn't hear what you were saying just now.
Yeah, that's why, because I lifted up the microphone on my headset, and when I do that, nothing I say comes through. No audio comes through. As soon as I put it down, that's when my voice comes through on the thing.
Oh,
So right now
that's
my microphone is
interesting.
down.
So you're mute. So you have a mute function that's adjusted by your by your mic being up. I have a mute button on the cord of my mic here, and it blinks red when I'm muted. But that hasn't always stopped me from not noticing.
Interesting.
Yeah. Um, and sometimes I just don't give a shit, and I just eat with my mic on anyway.
You could do that. You could do that.
I ended up doing that when I was doing the Flash game stream Friday night this week, and there were several poor decisions that were made during that stream. In a really really heated moment, I said "have at thee" and then the N word, not with a hard R, mind you, with an A, and I was there's context here. I was using a melee weapon, and my brain was going was going over an old meme that one of my friends sent me about how California has open carry laws, and one of the comments on that meme was, "Imagine some dude just pulls up on you and says, 'Have at they my neighbor,'" and because I got in because heat of the moment with intent with the game, I'm like, "Oh shit." That's why I haven't exported that one to YouTube.
Oh yeah, you put that up, you're gonna get banned immediately.
Yeah, I'm grateful I'm grateful that nobody was watching that. I haven't deleted it from the Twitch yet because I just haven't gotten around to it, but I'm going to after this podcast ends. Actually, I'm going to take down that one. I'll re-upload I'll re-upload the second half where that doesn't happen because I played 2 games on the pod, no, 3 on the stream on Friday, and I'll probably just edit the video where I cut out that segment of the game of gameplay, or just cut out that game entirely. Um, I guess that's the benefit of being a small Twitch streamer is when you fuck up, nobody's there to notice.
Oh, absolutely. But this is a problem though, because once we either you get big or we get big, whichever comes first,
If we get
that is
big.
something we, if that is true, God willing, that is something we have to watch out for in the future. Should we ever get famous, we have to be very, very careful what we say on here.
That's why I'm like, that's why I make no secrets about who I am and what kind of person I am. Because it's like, you know what you're in for with me.
Oh, I was well aware.
Yeah. It keeps things simple that way. They can't cancel you if they can't cancel me if I've canceled myself first.
Or if you just don't work for a company that would fire you if you like don't have the quote correct opinions.
Right. You can't. They also can't cancel me if I'm not making money on my streams.
Hey,
You can't attack my livelihood if I don't have any livelihood to attack.
your attacks have failed.
Of course, for anyone to be attacking us, like we would have to become notable at first anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
I have noticed that on YouTube, our podcasts tend to get like an average of 8 or 9 views on there. A couple episodes only have 5 or 6, but I mean that's the numbers I'm seeing right now, which is still more than I expected to see. Because back when I first started YouTube, where I was doing Let's Plays with my brother on my old channel for my website that I had made, we were getting like 1 or 3 views at most.
That could be because I've been sharing the show around. Like, I gave one episode to my aunt, I gave it over to my father, who in turn gave it to my uncle, who wanted to see it, and I think those people might have been spreading it around.
Well, that's still more people than I've ever seen watching my stuff. Like I was telling, I was so excited when I think the two highest viewed videos on my channel are a Stardew Valley episode where I actually have like a more personal discussion with one of my viewers, um, and the other, which was it was a Stardew Valley episode, and that got like 65 views. And then the second highest viewed video on my channel is from my Fallout New Vegas Let's Play that's currently on hiatus, where I was exploring the TARDIS. That got like 56 views.
Oh wow.
Yeah, my game videos, my gameplay videos that aren't Flash related or Homefront, tend to get in like the 20s, in like the mid 20s for view count. Um, Homefront, I was getting like 3 views, and I'm like, yeah, that's understandable. It's an incredibly niche game. Um, and the podcast. Admittedly, we are kind of a niche thing, faith-based podcast. You don't see many of those, but that's good because that also means there's less competition.
Absolutely. That increases chances of us getting big through this.
Right, right, absolutely. And I'm sure that VTubing has also helped to grow the audience a bit. Um, I've been seeing a steady increase of viewers as I keep doing this, and followers on the Twitch. So hopefully one day, we'll have actual people in the chat maybe when we're live. Most of my views
Got it.
come in from like after the segment's already ended, and you're watching the pre-recorded stuff or the VOD.
Speaking of VTubers, I went back to your tweet that you posted promoting the episode, and one of the likes came from a VTuber, nonetheless.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've made friends with a few VTubers on Twitter. Um, the first VTuber that I ever made friends with was Killer Tofu, and he's actually the one that inspired me to start VTubing myself. Tofu's a really great guy. If you do you watch him?
I watch his stuff occasionally, but not all the time.
Yeah, I'm there on the more regular basis, and he's a really friendly guy, really entertaining. Um, and he's like he's a total bro. Can't say enough. It's like I can't say a bad thing about him. But on Twitter, I've made friends with a few others, and recently started watching Four Button Soul on Twitch, and we were I emailed him a picture of my pizza earlier. It was either this week or last week, because I was having pizza for lunch and watching his stream, and I jokingly said, "How do you send pizza via internet?" And he's like, "Oh, he's like, oh, you can email it." And then and the Mad Lad gave out his actual email. So I emailed him a picture of the pizza.
Oh man.
Um,
Now that you mention it, I have a hilarious story to share. So last week, on our first day back, Rick Cooper did an episode on the whole Greta Thunberg, Andrew Tate saga, and basically during this whole shenanigan, Andrew's like, "Hey, why don't you send me your email so I can show you a list of like cars?" And then Greta sends an email address, but it was like, oh, yeah, it was the most ridiculous thing. It was like, um, you have a small dick at I don't know, it was like thumber.com or something. And then the email was actually, I think she was trying to like own Tate, but it didn't go very well because they were just made fun of how dumb the email was. And then he did a response video where he's like, "So you showed me your email address, and you called it like I have a small dick. Like, why would you say that?" Yeah.
right.
And granted, I'm saying this as a guy who doesn't like either of those people, but like, yeah, that emo roast is not very good. Like, basically, everyone in that video got completely roasted by Brett. It was hysterical. I loved it.
Rightly so.
But
I'm with you there too. I do not like Greta Thunberg. I think she's an insufferable jackass who was manipulated by her parents. I feel bad for her. But at the same time, she is pretty annoying if you've seen her like interviews and shit. Um,
oh,
Tate is a shithead. Um, don't get me wrong. The dating scene here in the U.S. and the West in general is kind of fucked. As is like the social culture between men and women. It's a big problem that you and me have spoken on at least a couple times now. That said, Tate's a shithead. He went too far in the right direction.
yeah, he's definitely someone I would advise not looking up to because all he talks about is like cars and like how to like use women and stuff, and that's not the kind of person young men should be looking up to.
Right, right. Again, and I look at Tate and his ilk, and I think to myself, and I'm like, I understand why he's popular among young men. Because of the problems that we're facing. Do I think that he's Do I think he's dangerous? Not really. I just think that don't use him as. I think the worst. I think he's only dangerous in that if you use him as a role model, you're going to turn into a piece of garbage. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of young people are looking for guidance, not just in like spiritual sense that we try to provide here on the podcast, but also in like social sense. Um, anxiety disorders are on the rise, as are social disorders like autism spectrum disorder. And the fact that people don't have both parents in their life has kind of left people um, completely shooting in the dark when it comes to how to approach the opposite gender.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're talking about in terms of my generation. This is more so an issue of my generation than probably yours. But I come from a generation where so many people are either from divorced parents, or they are in a single parent household, or they're just not living in a functional place, and it's giving them a crooked lens as to how to look at the rest of the world.
Um, it's a problem in my generation too. The difference between your generation and my generation on this issue is that it became normal as my generation was growing up. Whereas when you're with your generation, it was already the norm, and it's very, very unfortunate that that's the case.
Yeah, it really stinks. I will say this though. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household where my parents never divorced. They had their, I think they had been married for over 20 years by this point. And sure, they've had their ups and downs. For the most part, it's been relatively stable. They love each other very much, and it's a beautiful thing. And I've always said to myself, um, when I get married, I'm never getting divorced. That one marriage will be the only one that's going to last till the day I croak, basically.
I hope that's the case with me too, but because I want to have a contingency for everything, um, me and mom were actually talking about this some weeks ago, around like slightly before Christmas time, and I told her, this might shock you, but I'll get married in the eyes of God, but I refuse to get married in the eyes of the state. If I get married, I'm going to ask a pastor or priest to, oversee the wedding, but I'm not going to file. I'm not going to file out the paperwork. I don't want to file the paperwork. Government needs to get the fuck out of marriage. That's one of my other reforms for how to fix the you know divorce rates in the country. One, abolish no fault divorce. Two, get the government the fuck out of marriage in general. Three, some social reforms have to take place that we as a society need to adopt. We can't have the government solve that for us. The government's job in this issue is get the fuck out of the way, essentially.
Yeah, honestly, the only thing the government should be doing is like defending our rights, defending our nation, defending our borders. That's basically it. Any money taken taxation should only be used for what's absolutely necessary, and I mean absolutely necessary for the government to run. Anything beyond that can and should be cut.
Right. I absolutely agree 100%. Um, I might be a bit more left than you on that matter, if only because I've seen what happens to people who need those social safety nets taken and have it taken away from them. Um, there are some people who need far more help than you or I. What I would do is I would basically make it considerably harder to use those social safety nets not if you're not in need of them though. Only the people who need them should be accessing them. And I can guarantee you that as it is right now, there are probably more people that don't need it that actually have access to it than just those who need it. Um,
Yeah, I won't rule out that there's some people who may need it, but I would also argue that charity organizations can probably do a better job than the government of like helping those who are truly in trouble and need. I think Salvation Army is a good example of one. That's just what comes to the top of my head. Um, but it really goes to show sometimes like the community or private individuals can do a much better job of like helping one another than especially the federal government. If it's like a local state government, it's a different conversation,
oh
typically.
yeah, one of my favorite quotes actually comes from Bill Clinton. I can spend my money better than you can. That is exactly how I feel about the federal and state government when it comes to funding. It's like
Pretty much.
it's like everyone. A common joke about libertarians is, "What about the roads?" It's like you know, you don't. You can just hire some engineers to build a road. It's not that fucking hard. I mean,
If Domino's Pizza can fill the roads free of charge as like a business, I'm sure you could open up your own company that's just designer on fixing roads.
right.
That's all you do.
Um, Granted, originally, what was it? I think part of the problem, one thing I've heard, I've never seen this for myself because I have only ever lived in left-leaning states, with the exception of Wisconsin, but I was there for like half a year, so I don't know if that counts. Um, I've noticed that more conservative states tend to have better infrastructure, and I have a theory about this where I think if you have access to a greater pool of money to draw from, you tend to treat it like, oh, we can just spend it on whatever. You know, it goes the death of a thousand cuts because it's like, oh, we have a surplus, um, and the money just gets spent on anything like things other than what it was supposed to be used for. Um, because I hear in places like Texas in the case of Wisconsin, the roads are actually half decent there.
Yeah, I can test that. I recently went on vacation in Nashville a few months ago, and for the most part, the roads were pretty steady. They were actually a lot smoother than what we have up here in Connecticut, which is does surprise me. The only part of Nashville I was in that felt kind of weird was 12 South, but that's because that area was under construction. So naturally, things were a little out of bounds. But the places that were not under construction, those roads were pretty smooth, and everything looked very well put together. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Since we're on the topic of politics, do you hear about what happened with Senator McCarthy?
Oh yeah, I heard Granted, it took a while, but eventually got the speakership. But I think he had to do some conditions first to
No,
get those
no,
needed
he
votes.
didn't get he didn't get the speakership.
What?
Yeah, he's
I
been
thought he
voted.
did.
No, no, because he refused to make the concessions. He's been voted out. He doesn't get it. Period. Now.
Wait, what? Seriously?
Yeah, they've
I.
recounted like 3 or 4 fucking times, but he conceded. So now the vote is going to be for someone else.
Oh, wow. So so first to get rid of Cheney last year, now we
We get
robbed
rid of
McCarthy of the speakership?
Yep.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. Now, who takes speakership of the House is another matter. It very well could be a Democrat, but I hate McCarthy so I hate. Okay, Joe McCarthy did nothing wrong. This other McCarthy, who's probably related to him, get him out of here. Fucking rhino.
Yeah. I'm more upset at the 200 Republicans who voted for him than the 20 who voted against him. It's like, why are you voting for the same guy who screws you over every time?
It's because the Republican Party is still unfortunately infested with fucking neocons. We've gone. I know me and Rick haven't discussed this on the podcast, but we've had personal discussions about this. I hate neoconservatives and neoliberals. I hate the monoparty. They are everything that is wrong with this country, and they have been for the past 60 years. They cannot be gotten rid of fast enough. That said, they're still better than communists and socialists. Um, I look at what's going on in the Democratic Party, where it's commies and socialists versus the neoliberals, and I look at that and I'm like, oh, okay, whoever wins, we're all screwed anyway. It's kind of good that they're infighting just as much as the Republicans are, because if they weren't, we'd be in deep shit.
Yeah, like on the one hand, less stuff is gonna get done, but at the same time, um, we don't have to worry about like any crazy legislation getting passed that radically changes this country for the worse.
Right. What my hope is that we can get. One of my hopes is that we get an investigation of the Twitter files and the FBI's inappropriate pressuring of Twitter to censor Americans' First Amendment rights.
I mean, all that stuff is out in the open, so that should not be too hard to do once it's set up.
Right. I'm just hoping that the public is very quick to forget political issues. Most people just like read their morning newspaper or their equivalent, and after that go about their day. Um, I'm a bit different. I've always been fascinated by politics, even since I was about like 5 or 6 years old. Um, though, granted, when I was younger, I was considerably less nuanced. I was only really worried about. I didn't really care about left versus right economics. I was more concerned about how creepingly authoritarian the federal government was becoming in the wake of 9/11. Um, I once saw when I watched Attack of the Clones. I actually made the realization that Bush was kind of acting like Palpatine in that he was using the crisis to consolidate power and push his own bullshit, and that really disturbed me.
Mm.
Um, I actually thought that Bush was going to become an autocrat, like declare himself king or emperor of America. Of course, thankfully that didn't happen. And I think a big problem that the left has nowadays is they act like he's still the president. It ain't. It's not the early 2000s anymore. The right's kind of reformed.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Not only are we not like the all neocon and stuff like that, but I would argue in many ways the right's become a lot more diverse. Like we're seeing, like if you look at the major speakers on the right, we're seeing more women, we're seeing more African Americans, we're seeing even more LGBT folks in some cases that are all becoming major players on the right wing.
right.
And
And the way that the left has been reacting to that is very interesting. People I know who are in the LGBT crowd have called other LGBT people who join the right a traitor. There is a girl I knew in high school, and I'm going to name names only because I don't want you guys to think I'm talking out of my ass here. Her name was Sahara. Good person. I still think there's good in her. I just think that when it comes to political matters, she's been blinded. But she called Milo Yiannopoulos a traitor to the LGBTQ community. And, to me, that stinks of how in the past, if black people voted conservative like or did other things, they were considered a race traitor by Democrats. That was You don't see that as much these days. That was more of like a 70s, 60s, and 50s thing. But I'm disturbed by a party preaching diversity and then calling people with different who they claim to be representing traitors if they don't agree with them.
well,
Uh,
that's the thing. The only thing they really value is unity of thought. It does. The truth is, it doesn't really matter who you are, what your background is. If you're not saying the approved talking points, you are the enemy.
mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if you watch Tim Pool. I do, and Tim Pool actually refers to the left as a cult. He's starting. He's like openly calling them that now. Um, he's even like in some of his videos, he's even said like, how you beat the cult in America? It's not just you can't just keep calling the left hypocrites. It's not going to do anything. You've got to convince people that their ideas are bad and that what they're doing is wrong. You've got to convince the layperson.
Yeah, because I think the layperson on the culture level understands that the culture's not in a good spot. But I noticed, especially post 2022, they're failing to make the connection between the problems in the culture and the political forces that are causing those problems in the first place. They're not making that connection. And in some cases, they're voting in the very people who are kind of screwing them over.
Yeah, yeah. I unfortunately don't pay attention to issues outside of California and DC when it comes to politics. Um, I try. It's just for the sake of peace of mind, really. Um,
Yeah, you can't fix everything. Although I will say this, I think people definitely need to pay more attention to local elections more so than the federal offices.
Absolutely. I was actually just about to say that myself. Because you want to know how you fix Washington D.C. You don't. Well, no, that's not entirely true because federal elections do matter, but the states actually have more power than people realize. And you see more immediate results when you're dealing with state and local elections. Um, I the only reason I haven't run for governor of California, I think I would beat Gavin Newsom because the guy's a shithead. Guy's a clown and an absolute fool. Do you know that? You know why I have so much disgust and hatred for Gavin Newsom? The
Why is that?
motherfucker Um, are you aware of? Do you remember earlier this summer when there was a heat wave?
I think it's been a while. You could recap some
Okay,
of that.
so in like August or June, August or July, I want to say August. There was a nasty heat wave. We had over 100. We were hitting over 100. People were dying and passing out. Newsom gets on the TV to give a statement in a fucking zipped up shirt, like like one of those like a zipped up jacket, or like not a heavy jacket, but one of those light jackets that like a windbreaker, but it's like made out of fleece or some cloth material.
Hmm.
Zipped up one of those and a baseball cap, talking to Californians about how we have to use less electricity because we were having brownouts and blackouts. If too much electricity was being used at our residence, it would be shut off. The motherfucker had the gall to give that announcement while wearing those clothing in what was clearly an area with the air conditioning blasting. Why else would he need clothes like that? Why would he be wearing a zipped up windbreaker? Fuck Gavin Newsom. He's a piece of shit and a hypocrite. It stinks of kings in the olden days holding a feast in the middle of a fucking famine.
Oh boy. Hey, I have a question though. So given that this is technically still an episode of Branch Brothers, would this like sort of off the clock segment be like its own thing, or would this whole thing just be like one giant episode?
Oh, the
Because
plan is definitely to break this into its own thing. I like we got to separate the church and the state here.
yes, absolutely. Let's not make the same mistake that that past governments have made, shall we say?
Yeah, well, um, that was that was actually part of the reason that the Jedi fell to the Sith in Revenge of the Sith. They became too entangled with the politics of the Republic.
Yeah, that was a problem even leading into the prequel era. I don't know if you've seen Tales of the Jedi, the miniseries in Disney Plus or
No,
not,
I'm
but
no no. The only Tales of the Jedi I follow is the comic books from the '90s.
yes, that's the original story. I aware that. But basically, in this miniseries, there's basically a 3 episode arc focusing on Count Dooku, and the story basically focuses on how not only how corrupt the Republic has become in the years leading up to Episode One, but also goes to show, like, it explains why Dooku turned to the dark side, why he and then working with Palpatine, and it also showed what had happened to Jedi Order. Not only was the Republic corrupt, but the Jedi was basically just doing the whims of the Republic. I mean, in the second episode of that arc, Mace Windu gets picked on the Council over Dooku simply because he did what the Council wanted instead of what was the right thing, which was to actually investigate the matter of this like dead Jedi who had been killed. Like, yeah, they
Interesting.
found the Jedi body, but like Dooku was basically jaded by the fact that this guy who basically wanted to walk away as soon as the Senate gave their answers, he was awarded a council seat while Dooku was just given nothing.
Interesting. Um, that might actually fit into Legends continuity on its own. Because a lot of a lot of Dooku's motives um, in the main timeline of Legends is just he's basically Star Wars Senator Armstrong. Might rule of the strong, might makes right, that sort of thing. He was one note, very much so. But if you've read Darth Plagueis and a few other EU novels that take place around that time period, there's a bit more into why Dooku starts growing uh, disillusioned with the Republic and the Jedi Order. Now, it's never expressly stated, but I might actually look into Tales of the Jedi.
You
Um,
really should. It's on Disney Plus, but you can
oh
probably just
well,
get like a
never
free
mind then.
trial. Yeah, that's why. But they have clips on YouTube, so you could probably watch it through there.
Yeah,
Like at least some of the key moments.
yeah, I might. This does bring something up though. I really, really wish that Disney or whoever's in charge of this would stop fucking naming the new continuity stuff after already existing EU stuff, making it harder to find. It's really annoying. It needs to stop
Oh,
because
like
you
the Rogue Squadron movie.
Rogue Squadron movie, Um, Tales of the Jedi. It's frustrating. It's like, come up with your own names, damn it! Stop stealing EU names.
I find it funny how Disney threw out the EU when they took over, but they basically made a sequel trilogy that was just a worse version of like the the Shadows of the Empire from the comics. No,
No,
no, not
not
Shadows of the
Shadows.
Empire.
Dark
It was
Empire.
Dark Empire. Dark Empire. Yes.
Well, it's a
Making like
hodgepodge. Rise of Skywalker was a really, really, really shitty version of Dark Empire. Granted, Dark Empire had its problems, but it still worked off of rule of cool. Like, it's one of those turn your brain off and have fun sits or reads. Um, Whereas the but other elements of the trilogy were more along the lines of the Legacy of the Force books. If you're not familiar, Legacy of the Force was the Second Galactic Civil War, where the Republic was growing pretty despotic. The Jedi's actually tried to stay neutral in the conflict, and Jason Solo took over as a sort of dictator figure and became the Sith Lord Darth Caedus. I haven't read it yet because I haven't gotten to that part of the EU. That takes place after the Yuzon Vong War. Um, it's pretty late in the timeline, actually.
hmm.
But there's definitely notable elements from it in the sequel trilogy. When I saw Kylo Ren and found out that he was Han and Leia's son, I'm like, this is just a shitty Chinese bootleg version of Darth Caedus. Fuck off, Disney.
Oh man, it's kind of funny. Well, there was a lot of problems with the sequels. I think the biggest problem, I think many people talked about this before. I know Thor Skywalker's discussed this on his channel. The biggest issue with the sequel trilogy is that the Disney basically had no plan going into this. They just thought that they could just make a couple movies that kind of looked like Star Wars. That was going to be a massive hit, and they could just build in a time period going forward. Because that was their plan post sequels. Their original plan was just to do. They were always going to do more TV shows. They wanted to do more movies, but they wanted to do within the sequel trilogy era. And that once it ended, they could just do more stories in that time period and build from there. But of course, the sequel trilogy was not the massive hit that they want it to be. So now we're at the point where they're kind of hopping around the timeline with different mainly with Disney Plus shows, hopping around the timeline, doing all this different stuff.
Right, and they also had no fucking plan going into actually making the sequel trilogy. I don't know if you knew that part, but we recently got it confirmed that they had no plan at all.
I literally just sit there for the last 5 minutes.
Oh, sorry. But yeah, no, the only plan was make money because Star
Yeah,
Wars.
basically, they just thought, oh, we just make it. Iger was like, oh, we just make it look like Star Wars. People love it. And it's like, well, no, Star Wars is more than just cool ships and space battles. There's a story to it.
It makes me so fucking angry that they didn't go with like the Marvel approach, because as I understand, or yeah, as I understand it, the Marvel movies were largely adaptations of already existing comics.
Yes.
See, why the fuck didn't Disney just do that? They could
Yeah.
have printed money for decades if they
Oh,
decided to adapt
absolutely.
the EU. If
I
they
mean, let's
made
get.
movies or shows off the EU, like, faithfully, holy shit, they'd be rolling in money right now.
Yeah, they wouldn't be in the dip bubble they have right now.
They could legally print money! That's how much they'd be making.
Bro, they'd be making like Wii and DS money.
They could start their own country with the money they would be making if they had done that.
I mean, and there's so many options too. We have the Heir to the Empire trilogy, the first one with Thrawn. We have the Yuzon Vong arc. There's
Legacy
the
of the
one with the Young
Force. You've
Jedi.
got,
There's
yeah, the Young
yes,
Jedi Knights and the Anakin and the Junior Jedi Knights. I think they would kind of roll those into one, or maybe
yeah. I
make
mean, they
like a
could,
prequel to the series with Junior Jedi Knight. Yeah, but there's so much to work with. Holy
I mean,
crap!
even the old Republic has a crap ton of stuff they could have worked with. It's like you guys had this massive. Granted, it wasn't George's canon; it was like a secondary canon, or a deutero canon, as I like to say it. But you still have this other thing with all these stories from the books, the comics, the games that you could have pulled from at any time to do whatever you wanted. Instead, you throw that all away you do a crappier version of those stories with your sequel trilogy, and then on top of that, your head of Lucasfilm goes far to say, "Oh, we don't have any books or comics to pull from like Marvel does." And I go, "Oh my
Oh,
goodness, are you serious?"
don't remind me. I nearly popped a blood vessel when I heard that from Kathleen Kennedy. I actually threw my phone across the room in frustration.
I'm like, "Is
I
this
was
woman
so
serious?"
angry. I was actually at work at the time. I slammed my phone on my desk and like slid it aside and just went for a walk around the office building because I was just like I was so pissed off by that.
Have you heard something that was just so ridiculous you just want to like punch something?
No, but I have
Oh,
I have not always been an even keel person. I think I've told you about this on one of our undocumented where we were just calling and having a casual conversation. There was a point in I don't think I've brought it up on the stream. There was a point in time in high school where I was hanging out with one of my friends. His name's Jeff. Jeff is socially inept. If he is he's not the best socially. And I was dating a girl at the time, and he made a joke about stealing my girl. And I just strangled the dude. I just reached out, grabbed his throat, and started squeezing. And I did feel slightly bad about it afterwards. Um,
slightly? What do you mean slightly?
that should give you an idea of where my mindset was at the time. I regretted it later. I probably shouldn't have done that. Um, I what I did was wrong. Um, it was clearly a joke. It's just like it's one of those moments where yeah, it's wrong, but you also have kind of the fuck around and find out thing going on. Um, if you, it's like I wouldn't joke to my friends about stealing their girlfriend. I wouldn't do that. I would think most people would have the good sense not to.
Yeah, unless the person's also dating too, it's like, hey, how about we trade girlfriends or something? But like, maybe even in that context, I know it'd be super appropriate.
Right. It's you got to know your audience and you got to make it very clear that you're just poking fun. Um, uh, and Jeff apologized, and then I apologized after he apologized, and I'm like, I still hang out with Jeff every now and then now. Um, I try to do right by him because he was my friend. I was pretty shitty to him. I actually stole a few things of his. Didn't have the stones to apologize and make things right until years later. Shortly after my release from the hospital, because I kind of realized, I don't know when I'm going. Like to be able to go to my grave with no regrets. And that's
Mm.
when I kind of nutted up and I'm like, hey man, I stole this from you. Um, that's what happened, and I'd like to make it right. And I stole a few it was stupid shit too. I stole Pokemon no Yu-Gi-Oh cards and a Pokemon game, and I didn't have the cards anymore by that time, but I bought him another copy of the game because that's what he was. And every now and then we still hang out and we go fishing. He comes over for holiday parties sometimes. Unfortunately, Jeff is still not the best socially, and he can kind of get grating. And I got to remind myself, it's like, look, Seth, you know, you wouldn't be angry at a blind person for bumping into a table. Don't be too angry at Jeff when he's like not getting it.
Yeah, when people like, you just gotta be patient with them.
Yeah. Unfortunately, patience isn't. Patience used to be one of my strong suits. As I've gotten older, it's gotten progressively worse, which is rather unfortunate. Um, Although I wonder if maybe I always had poor patience. It's just that as a teenager and kid, I was too scared to like stick up for myself when I was losing my temper. Um, maybe I did the right thing, not because I was a good person, but because I was just too timid to do wrong. I don't know.
That
Um,
is a very strange sentence to make. Like, you want to do the wrong thing, but you're scared? Or
Uh,
maybe it's just your conscience kicking in, being like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do this.
um, there's a number of things I've done that are actually very questionable. Um, Part of the reason the Darth Bane, the first book, hit so hard for me when I was reading it. Um, there's a scene in the first Darth Bane novel where Darth Bane has the realization that he killed his father. Bane grew up on a mining colony that was sort of a debt penal colony with his dad. His dad was a drunkard and a shithead, would beat Bane regularly. And one night, Bane found himself sitting on his bed thinking, I hope you die, over and over and over again. Lo and behold, his dad had a heart attack in the middle of the night that evening. Um, and in like the halfway point of the book, Bane realizes that he used the Force to kill his dad, and it actually causes him to lose connection with the Force because he's trying to draw from the dark side, and because he's remorseful about what he does, it weakens his ability to draw from the Force. He only gets it back after training with his girlfriend Kithany. Now, the reason I bring this up, it's tied to one of the worst things I've done. There was a season in my life where me and my mom were not on good terms at all. And I had hoped that she had gotten into a car crash. Thankfully, she didn't. But you know, and and I only read the Darth Bane book earlier this year, and it had been years since I thought about it. But I'm just like, yeah, shit. I'm uh, I'm kind of a piece of shit here.
Yeah, sometimes you forget how dangerous it can be. But I also found this quote from Dr. Pearson where he's like, um, you know, if you think a strong man is dangerous, wait to see what a weak man can do. Like a lot of people tend to underestimate how much damage somebody can do just because they don't look like physically they're not tall or they're not physically strong. They think that they're weaker, that they can't do anything. But like you put them in the right circumstance and they're not of a sound mind, they can cause them serious harm.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. I actually don't. I actually haven't listened to too many of Dr. Peterson's lectures, but I know um, when I was at my first week on the job at Qualcomm, um, back when I was doing a summer internship for them, I had to Uber there one day, and my Uber driver actually was a fan of Jordan Peterson's work. We just got to talking about current events and how much bullshit was going on. And I'm like, you know, you seem to be quoting a lot. Your quotes sound a lot. What you're saying sounds a lot like the stuff Dr. Peterson says. And he's like, oh, you're familiar with Dr. Peterson? I'm like, yeah, yeah, I have seen a few of his things. And yeah, no, that was an interesting Uber ride.
Yeah. I actually have both 12 Rules for Life and the sequel Beyond Order in my library, and I've read them both. They're very good.
maybe I
Very
should
proud of my collection.
maybe I should pick up 12 Rules for Life for my higher brow stuff. Um, I have I kind of I jokingly refer to my collection as I have my fun stuff, which is Doctor Who and Star Wars predominantly for my reading material. Then I have the highbrow stuff like C.S. Lewis's books on theology, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, several of Ayn Rand's works, including We the Living, Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged, and I think I have another one, but I can't remember.
Yeah,
Um,
I have Atlas Shrugged in my library, so I also have Brave New World. So
I
I'm gonna
have
go
Brave
through
New
them both.
World. I have the Dystopia trilogy, Brave New World, Animal Farm, and Big Brother's watching you. That one. I don't remember the name of it right now.
1984.
Thank you. That's the one. 1984.
How do you forget that? That's literally a year.
I don't know. My brain doesn't. My brain my brain will just delete information sometimes without. Here's the thing about my brain. If I don't use information, it gets deleted.
Oh, that's odd. I was
Yeah.
unaware of that.
It makes learning new things especially difficult. I do have a legitimate learning disability. We don't know what it is specifically. It could just be from being on the autism spectrum, or it could be something else. What we do know though is that I definitely do have a learning disability. You should have seen me when we were trying to get me to learn spelling in school. We tried everything. Shit, we even tried me standing on my head so that the blood would flow to my brain. I was
But I guess it took you a while to learn, huh?
I still couldn't do it. I was still struggling. And I think that was when my mom kind of like, okay, you know what? Okay, you genuinely have. It's not that you're not trying in school. It's that as smart as you are, you genuinely have a disability here. I'll cut you some slack. The head standing one sticks out to me because I remember it's like it hurt to stand on my head because it was a carpeted floor, but it was a very shallow carpet.
Oh,
Yeah, and I had to do it for like I think a minute or 5 minutes, and we were doing that while trying to get me to learn spelling, and I think I passed that. I think I passed that next test. My method of study worked differently. I was able to link what I was learning to video games in some way, and that helped me retain the information slightly better.
hmm.
Yeah. Um,
Well, I'm glad you see you didn't have the parents to do your game slowly if you didn't do well in school.
Actually, I did, but that was years later. Um, the whole standing on the head thing that happened when I was in grade school in and we were living in Wisconsin. Um, Part of what sparked the sort of feud between me and my mom is one day I came home and my grades were abysmal. She took my games and got rid of them. Well, no, she took my games and said that I could get them back after I had gotten my grades up. Which, okay, fair enough. Shit grades, get grounded, get your stuff back when you get better grades. That makes sense. I got my grades out of the shitter, and she did not give them back. She decided to ground me from them indefinitely, which that's where the feud sparked. Um,
Yeah, 'cause she
and
broke the deal.
she got rid of them and gave some of them to my brother. She sold some, threw some out, and gave the others to my brother. Um, I stole my stuff. I stole what stuff I could retrieve back. Wasn't easy, and I got caught eventually. Um, but that just mean that didn't stop me. No, that just meant I had to get smarter about how I did things. And for a while, I actually kept games on it. When I learned about ROMs and emulators from a friend at school. Now those were contraband, but they were easy to smuggle in and hide. I kept them on a flash drive that I played on my old shitty Windows XP computer. Um, you want to hear the story about how I fucked my Windows XP?
Oh, what
This
happened there?
Okay, so I was not always as tech savvy as I am today. Until I was about like 15 or 16 years old, I didn't know shit about computers. I thought that you uninstalled programs by deleting the data off the readable disk. Um,
Hmm.
and this computer had been through hell before, by the way. This computer was you had to plug headphones into it so that you could hear anything, even when it had speakers. You had to use a 3.5 millimeter jack because the USB speaker port was fried. Um, I'm pretty sure it had been hit by viruses at some point. It could not connect to the internet anymore by this point. Um, no, that's a separate computer. Okay, me and my brother. My first encounter with computer viruses was on a old computer of ours, and it got hit with something really nasty. Wasn't as bad as the rootkit, mind you, but it was like porn ads on the desktop. It was not a fun time to
Oh
be.
no.
Yeah, those viruses, those are the most evil sons of bitches on the planet. And do you know why? Because they make you afraid to get help from an adult. If you make viruses, I'm singling you out. If you make viruses and you play porn on people's computer, you are the worst kind of person. You're an asshole. Fuck you. At least with ransomware or identity theft virus, at least there's a motive, and you're not like scaring people into not getting help. Like if kids use that computer. But if you're making viruses that like show porn, or especially the guy who made was it Fizzer? There was one particularly evil computer virus that made it look like you were downloading illegal porn to your computer. I don't remember which one specifically, but it's evil, diabolical.
Ooh.
Um, but no, the computer that I had that I was playing on emulators, it had been through hell. The speakers no longer worked. It couldn't connect to the internet. I deleted several important files that were from like playing CD games. Like I couldn't run The Sims on this thing, but that didn't stop me. I got myself my iPod Touch headphone speakers that came with. Plugged that in the back, put in the USB stick, and run the emulators off the USB drive. And I was gaming.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, anyways, how did your computer get all? How did that computer get all messed up?
I don't know. I think that it was a computer where we didn't have a wireless card for it, because at the time we bought it, it would have been like 2005 or 2006. The internet wasn't quite a requirement yet for people. It was more like an optional feature, so I don't think it ever had a wireless card. As for what happened to the speakers, that's a funny story. So what happened there was I decided to do a sort of experiment one day after high school, after I learned about the concept of grounding electricity through and rubber and how that all affects that. My experiment was completely harebrained. I would not recommend this. Don't do this at home. If you're watching us, don't do this. I put the prongs of a air freshener that you plug them into the wall. I put that between the grates of a metal spatula that had grates. The handle of the spatula was wood, which does not conduct electricity. So my thought is, okay, if this doesn't conduct electricity, does this mean that when I plug this into the wall, nothing will happen? No, that is not what happened at all. I nearly started a fire, and
Oh,
the computer was plugged in the kitchen at the time, and the wife, I probably fried several components inside the computer doing this, because it was around this point that that thing stopped being able to connect to the internet. I think, yeah, it was. So the sound stopped working. So it was that computer had been through hell. We had some internal fuckery going on with the wires because of my little experiment, and
oh,
the fire department had to come. And thankfully, I didn't burn down our house or start a fire. They had to come and do like a forensics analysis well, not forensics, but, they did an investigation to see how bad the damage was. Um, it could have been way worse. Thankfully, it wasn't.
mm.
Because I, but yeah, don't fuck with electricity. Uh, don't do stupid shit. Okay, just don't do what I did.
Alright.
If you're watching this, for the love of God, don't do it. You'll wreck your house and probably your electronics as well.
Oh man. This kind of reminds me of like the one time my dad intentionally stayed home. This was like decades ago, well before um he ever met my mother. This I think it was like late 60s, early 70s. He was like a little kid when it happened. So, um, basically, he decided he didn't want to go to school one day. So he convinced his mom, my grandmother, that he was sick. So she let him stay in. While he was staying in, he went under the bed and he was playing fireman, where he was trying to be a fireman. So he had his toy truck, fire truck, his toy fireman. He had a little house, and basically, he had the idea of uh, making actual fire so he could put
Oh
it out like the firemen do,
no!
because he was a huge fan of firemen as a kid. So he took a match, he lit the building toy on fire, and he was trying to use like a little
Where
thing
did he
of
get
water
the
to try.
match?
I think he took it from like the bathroom or something at his apartment. At the house. I don't remember. But
Oh,
anyways, he was in New York, so it was different. So anyways, he did that. He had a match, and he tried to put out with a little bit of water, but it wasn't going out. In fact, instead of going out, it basically because he's the kicker. He was under his mother's bed, which was huge, and the fire touched the bottom part of the bed, and it started lighting on fire. So he managed to get out before anything happened, but like the whole mattress was basically on fire. So he tried to put it out by like taking some water. So what he did was he ran to the kitchen. He took and just for some context, um when Puerto Ricans make rice, they usually the first thing they do is they take a pot and they fill it with water and they heat it up so they can put the rice in. But basically, he was trying to use that to put the fire out, and naturally, Saul's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I don't know." So he's running around. He puts the water on the bed. Here's the kicker, though. By this point, the water was boiling hot. Normally, when you put
Oh,
water on a fire, it goes out, but because it was hot water,
it
it took a little fire
evaporated.
under it. Yeah, it burst. The bed burst into flames. The fire was now spreading all over that room, and they basically had to evacuate the apartment, and then to get the actual fire department to come in and put the fire out. And because of all of that,
Oh, hold
my
up. Somebody just popped up in the chat. Where is Paladin's Quest? Oh, sorry, Texas Size. That comes from the Friday stream. I was playing a Flash game called Paladin, and I wasn't actually playing Paladin's Quest. I can play that though. It's in my library. Maybe I'll do it tonight. Um,
oh wow, we have a viewer.
yeah, we got a
That's
first
just
time person in the chat. Texas Size.
hey, welcome Texas Size. Well, glad to see you're here. Well, technically, we're at sort of I guess, the fun section of the podcast, the actual show end of it. But we're glad to have you here. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy this little segment we have here.
Yeah. Rick was just talking about how his dad was playing fireman as a kid.
Yeah, he basically lit the apartment on fire. The fire. Fortunately, they were able to put it out before any serious damage was done. But from that day forward, he never skipped a day of school ever again.
Oh, so he skipped school to do this? Wow.
Yes.
It was just one. It was just a conga line of bad decisions that day.
Literally, it all started when he decided he didn't want to go to school.
Oh, let me think. When did? I don't think I ever skipped school. Well, without mom's supervision. What happened when we had a couple of days where my mom picked me up from school and we just went and did something fun. One time we went to a sports bar and played pool and had this badass hamburger or burgers there. Um, I think that bar was either owned by my mom's friend John Dichtel, who she's still in contact with today. He comes by to visit every now and then. Uh, or it was owned by a friend of his. And oh, you know what? Why don't I tell you the story of the time I had to walk to school in a blizzard with my brother?
Oh,
Uh, have I ever told you that one?
I don't think so.
Okay, so this happened when me and my brother and mom were living in Wisconsin. It was the middle of winter, and the bus just did not show up. Um, and I'm like, okay, Sam, we can't stay here. We can't stay home all day. Mom would never believe us that the bus didn't come. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna walk to school because it is in walking distance. He's like, all right, well, considering how angry Mom will be, sounds like a good plan. Um, and there was snowfall, but it wasn't a blizzard yet. But about like quarter way into the trip, it turned into a blizzard. We were bundled up. We were wearing layers upon layers of clothing. I had scarf, hood, and everything. Um, my brother was bundled up too. By the time we got to school, I looked like I looked like fucking Two Face from Batman, and Sam looked like Anakin after having a dip in the lavas of Mustafar. That's how chapped our skin had been as we walked through the blizzard to get to school. Now, thankfully, the teachers were super chill. They're like, Sam, Seth, you're so late. What happened? And I told them we had to walk. The bus didn't show up. And they're like, okay, gym's going right now. Get to class. Like, do we have to make up the work we missed? They're like, considering what happened, no.
Oh wait. So how late did you get to school?
The day was half over.
Oh man.
Yeah, the wind from the blizzard was fucking intense. It really did slow us down.
Oh wow. Okay.
Uh,
Well, that would explain it.
yeah. It was one of those things. I guess people's idea of walking distance tends to differ. I consider a walk from my house to Tavern Road to be walking distance. Um, It'd take you about an hour's walk, but you'd still get there. Um, we waited for that bus for a long time. I think our walk only. I think me and my brother, our walk only took us like an hour or 45 minutes. Most of our day was spent waiting for the bus to show up.
Oh wait, so really, most people just sit by you just like being at home.
Yeah, half of the day we were just waiting for the fucking bus to show up, and it just didn't.
Oh, so that means so it's not just you guys. I bet you whoever was supposed to be on that bus, they probably missed either went to school late or they missed it outright.
Probably. But we came to the conclusion that mom would never believe us that the bus didn't show up because we had missed the bus a couple of occasions because we'd slept in and she had to
Hmm.
drive us or made us walk. So we're like, well, the bus didn't show up. Mom won't believe us that it didn't show up. We're gonna walk.
Wait, wasn't your mom there?
No, she had to go to work.
Oh,
Yeah. Mom went to work fairly early in the day.
oh, yeah, that's quite the crazy story you got there. I don't know if it's as crazy as my Blizzard story, but definitely sounds definitely out there.
So what's your Blizzard story then?
Okay, so back when I was in college, freshman year, there was this girl that I have been hanging out with time to time. I was considering dating her. Ultimately, I didn't for various reasons. But we were hanging out at the time. It was the two of us and our mutual friend who was a film major, and we just went to the common room. Because at the time I was in Commons, which is the dorm at QU that was the closest to the student center, and we were on the first floor because they had an arcade machine, and we were just playing Pac-Man on the machine. And we're like, gee, I don't know who said it, but someone said they were hungry, so like, okay, let's go to the rack and get some food. For those who don't know, the Rat is more commonly known as the Bobcat Den. It's basically a dining hall in Quinnipiac that's actually in the middle of the entire dorm complex at QU. It's like a little building off to the side. But at the time, it had started snowing, so we're like, oh shoot, it's snowing. Better get our stuff here. But fortunately, we had our like coats and everything, so we just got them bundled in. Actually, no, I don't think we did. I think we just had like a jacket or something. I don't remember. But anyway, at first it was light snow. As soon as we get outside, it turns to a storming blizzard with all this crazy snow. The snow was so thick, it was also combined with a thick fog, so you could only see like maybe like a foot or two in front of us. So we were trying to march our way through this crazy storm. So the thick ass fog, we got heavy winds, tons of snow, and right as we got close to where the rat was, I see a freaking thunderbolt in the sky during the blizzard, and I heard a
Holy
loud
crap!
crackle of no, I saw a lightning bolt, a crackle of thunder as we were entering the rat. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Why is there fucking thunder in a snowstorm?
That's really unusual.
I still remember that to this day. I'm like, did that just happen? When we get inside. I was talking to my friends. I'm like, did you guys see that? And they go, yeah, we saw that. I'm like, how is this even possible? And they go, we don't know. We just want food because they were hungry. So it's like, let's just get something to eat. And
So
we're
here's
fine.
the real question: did the thunder and lightning happen more than once during that blizzard?
I think that was the only time it happened, which is even stranger.
Okay. You know, the god of Gap was logical fallacy for a reason, but I gotta wonder if God was smiting someone at the time.
I mean, it had to be. It certainly wasn't me. It wasn't me.
You fucking
Somebody got on somebody got on God's bad side that day. I don't know who, but it wasn't me.
when I was scared. I was actually really scared of thunder as a little kid. I was scared of loud noises.
Hmm.
Um, my mom tried to make me feel better if by saying that God was just going bowling. One time when I was and during a thunderstorm, I prayed to God asking if he could stop bowling. uh, as an adult, those thunderstorms are fucking awesome. Rain is
Oh,
awesome.
oh yeah, combine, yeah, because a thunderstorm literally the best backdrop for a fight scene. Did you see the trailer for the first show from Tekken 8 where like Jin and Kazuya were fighting and it was in, like the middle of this intense thunderstorm with these like whirlpools?
No, I don't follow Tekken. I do play Tekken. I just don't follow it.
Oh man, you should have seen that first trailer, bro. It was intense. The graphics looked amazing. The effects were incredible, bro. It was one of the coolest fights I've ever seen. And
I
this
think
is
you'll.
just
I think I'll be able to give you a good idea of how invested I am in Tekken based on who I play off of. I play as the Einstein looking dude and Sebastian the butler, the old man butler. I
Einstein.
I play as those two dudes.
Hmm.
I the only copy of Tekken I have is I think Tekken 4 or 5 on my PS3.
PS3. Those games came on the PS2. What are you talking about?
No, I definitely have a copy of Tekken for the PS3.
Oh, that's probably Tekken 6 then.
Okay.
Because Tekken 6 is the one that came to PS3 and the 360. Because 4 and 5, I believe, are PS2.
Yeah, I remember when I was playing Tekken with my friend. I've only ever played Tekken with other people once. We were hanging out at my friend Forrest's place, and I was playing as the Einstein and the Butler, and my friend Brandon was like, "How are you this good at Tekken? You've never played." I'm like, "I don't know." And then in the next round, I just whipped everyone's ass again, and I just started yelling "I'm Einstein, bitch! Einstein, motherfucker!" Like that sketch in Robot Chicken.
Bro, honestly, as someone who never played Tekken before, when I got into it, I was actually pretty decent. Because, like, um, the guy I played a lot, I think, was actually, who was it? I don't remember who. But it was like a character who had like a really good like two-hit combo that I would just spam a lot. And I would just do that. Like literally, I joked about Tekken Call. I call it the button masher fighter because you just
Yeah,
mash the right buttons and you can
it
basically
is.
win
It
every time.
really is.
Yeah.
I can totally attest to that because that's my strategy when I play Tekken, and it
Yeah.
got me about as far as the final boss on Tekken 6 arcade
Yeah.
mode.
Oh wow. And you know what?
I didn't beat it, but I got that far.
Yep. And it's kind of funny because like you go in the training mode for Tekken. I was playing Tekken 7, not 6, but you go in the training mode, you see all these comms like, gee, what am I gonna do? But then you play the game, you just hit a couple buttons and you win.
Yeah. See, my favorite fighting games are Soul Calibur, Skullgirls. I kind of like Guilty Gear, but it's not a lot of fun to play it by yourself. I can play Soul Calibur by myself for hours. Um,
Yep,
it's
me
a
too.
it's a ton of fun to have someone playing against you though. Um, wait, Rick, I just realized something. Do you have Soul Calibur 6 for the PC?
No, I do have a PS4 though. I have the PS4 version.
Okay, next question. Do you have a PC?
How do you think I'm talking to you right now?
Good point. Good point. Okay, you know what? Add me on Steam later. I'm gonna hook you up with Soul Calibur 6. Maybe we can fight each other. That'd
Ooh,
be a
I have not
dude.
played Tekken 6. I mean, sorry, I have not played Soul Calibur 6 in like 4 years, so it's been a while. But I can probably do a decent job at it.
I haven't played in about half a year, so I'm a bit out of practice. Uh, but dude, that'd be a fun thing for us to record and just do like multiplayer, like game night with you and me.
Oh, next time you do a game show, you do multiplayer, just hook me up. I'll be more than happy to hop on. We can just play some matches.
All right. Note to self: when I'm once I'm not like conserving my income, like so that way I can make my ends meet. I'll hook you up with a copy of Soul Calibur because that's probably pretty cheap by now.
Oh yeah, it's probably like we can look this up later. It wouldn't surprise me if it's on like Rabbit Stuff Bamco. I don't think they've updated in a while.
Yeah, no, they came out with their last DLC I think last year, or no, the year prior. Yeah, the last DLC was Huang.
That was
I
2021 or 2020.
I want to say 2021, late 2021 though, like August or September.
Oh, yeah, I
Um,
stopped playing the game. I think around 2019. I don't remember.
you should.
Because the thing,
Oh, you should see how many custom characters I've made. I filled out um nearly every character in the downloadable slot, and I completely filled out the create a character slot. I think I have like 130 something characters now. I'd have to double check, but it is not a small number.
how did you have time to make all those characters?
I just did. I was doing that for fun. Admittedly, some of them happened while I was working from home on the clock. But in my defense, they had me filling out spreadsheets.
I guess you got that done like 10 minutes, and you had nothing to do the rest of the day.
Pretty much, pretty much. Um, or they had me manually testing the site, and there were so few changes that I kind of just started getting lazy and marking everything as pass. and the things that fail, and other things fail that had been that way for like weeks upon weeks on end. Um, Once they started, that was before they had me writing test cases and programming. Once that happened, I actually started taking my job seriously again.
Yeah. Right now I'm at this like slow period at work where like I'm doing stuff, but not much is really getting done on the production side. So I have found myself just basically just reading stuff just to
Oh,
kill time.
yeah, it's cool that you have a job that's like that. I've never had, in admittedly, I've never really had a part of my job where it's like where I was still getting paid for slow periods. Because if there's no work, I would usually just head home early and, or no, I think I only ever finished my work halfway through the day once. I got permission from my manager to leave, and I still got paid for the full day. But usually, how it goes, at least with because I was a temp, is I don't work those hours. I don't get paid.
Mm. Yeah, see, with me, I'm full time, so like even if I'm not like working the whole time, I still get paid for the time period that I
So your
filled in on the
salary,
schedule.
your
Yeah,
salary, you're not hourly. Yeah,
yeah.
I've only ever been hourly. I've never been salary. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. Because obviously with salary you get paid regardless. Um, but that means you don't get paid for overtime if you do overtime. At least
Mm.
that's how I understand it. Because my dad is salary, and he's gotten pulled in for overtime where because he's a salary, he doesn't get paid extra for the overtime that he has to do.
Yeah, that's true. I've only had to work overtime like maybe 2, 3 times. That was very early on in my career. Since then, I pretty much either work on the clock or sometimes I leave maybe like about an hour early, depending on half an hour early, an hour, depending on like what I'm doing or what's to be done.
Yeah, I used to work overtime a lot when I was working in private security, and I hate it made me hate overtime. That was what made me just start defending quiet quitting once it became like a phenomenon. It's like, no, see, if you don't want, it's like I'm not gonna work extra hours. If the company doesn't respect my time, why should I respect theirs? You know?
Oh, that's what that's about. Hey, do you remember when I was on Micah's Discord? I shared that post from like I think it was Kevin O'Leary, and he was complaining about how like stupid quiet quitting was, and how people were just being lazy, not doing their jobs or something like
Yeah.
that.
The quiet quit is where if it's your time to clock out, you clock out regardless of how complete the work is. And I will defend that to my last breath because I've worked for companies that do not respect your time. Where if someone shows up, if someone is running late, you have to stay until they relieve you, which is complete fucking horse shit.
No, that's silly. I especially if it's a salary position, unless it's like an urgent meeting or something that has to be done like right at that point in time. Why am I gonna stay past the point and leave? Because let's be honest, even Mike was like, look, most people tend to work a certain amount of hours because they still do at home. They're not most would not stay overtime unless it's like it has to be done that day. But if you're just asking people to stay overtime because like, oh, you just want them to work longer, well, that's a little silly.
Yeah, yeah, no, it comes off as out of touch at best. Um, it's interesting that you say especially if you're salary because I would argue especially if you're getting paid hourly, um, you shouldn't be staying any longer than you have to. Um, Actually, no, you're right because you do get paid overtime if you're hourly as opposed to salary.
Yeah, at least at your hour, you still get paid regardless of what you're doing. But your salary, you're only paid for what you sign up to work for, and the time slot.
Right, right. Um, I actually and this should give you an idea of how stark a contrast it was when I started working at Qualcomm. Um, I I did overtime one day, and I got a talking to from my manager, not my supervisor, but my manager, who I almost never heard from them. And he's like, "Look, Seth, what's this about?" I'm like, "Well, I dipped for some of the day, and I had to go into overtime. I'm sorry." He's like, "In the future, we had to get this done, so I stayed late." Well, okay, in the future, don't do that. Just go home at the 5 o'clock. That's what you got to do. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. It was a stark contrast working for Qualcomm as opposed to working for the private security firms that I did.
Wow, it sounded like they wanted you to work a salary position on an hourly wage.
Oh, we got another first timer in the chat. Hello, old olda drunk. Just got here, no idea what's being discussed. We'll say hourly workers seldom work beyond 40 hours for obvious reasons. Yeah, I'm me and my friend Rick here were just talking about like a I don't remember quite how we got on this topic, but we brought up quiet quitting and I'll say this: my dad works my dad is salary. Um, yeah, hourly workers. Companies don't want to pay overtime because so that's why they discourage overtime. Whereas salary, they'll be like they'll be more inclined to try and press extra hours on you because they don't got to pay you extra. My dad's salary, and he gets really nasty overtime during like the summer and the winter. Um, I remember there was one summer where we just could not have our usual Saturday conversation for several weeks in a row, almost an entire month, because his company kept sticking him with overtime. Yeah, quiet quitting is the phenomena of leaving at like time to clock out instead of staying to finish a project that isn't necessarily finished. Um, I will defend it to the death. I will defend that mindset to the death because I used to work in private security where your time is not respected. You have to stay on site until someone comes to relieve you of your post, even if that person is like late by hours. I Oh, okay. Yeah, it's that's interesting. I didn't think there were people in their 40s watching my streams. Well, or on Twitch for that matter.
Welcome, friend.
Yeah, welcome. Um, but
Yeah,
you know,
just to provide some context before we get here. Yeah, this is our sort of like post Branch Brothers freeform type thing. Usually we host the Branch Brothers podcast on Sunday, usually around like 1:30 my time. That's like 10:30 Pacific. We had some delays, so we started a little later. But yeah, I hope you can come back for more stuff. Seth does a lot of gaming streams throughout the week, so welcome. Glad to have you here. Hope you can come back for more.
yeah, no. Usually how it goes is on the weekdays I'm streaming games, and then me and Rick do our faith slash church podcast here from like 10:30 to about 11:30. But today we just decided, fuck it. Let's do some over. Let's go a bit over time and have like an off-topic segment. I'm probably gonna split it up into in its own video though, because we talked about cultural issues. We talked about cultural stuff like Star Wars because we're nerds. But we also talked politics, and I want to keep that separate from from the church stuff.
Remember,
Uh,
separate church of state.
Absolutely. How long have we been going for actually? Oh wow, so we're coming up on 2 hours and 39. Oh, so we're coming up on like a little over 2.5 hours now.
Yeah, pretty
Uh,
much.
so what do you want to do, Rick? Because we're starting to get people trickling in. Do you want to keep going, or do you want to call it here? Because I know we have been at this for a while now.
Let me see. I guess we can go for maybe another 20 minutes. We'll end up like a nice 3 hour thing.
Yeah, that sounds good. Don't quit a job if you think you can get if you don't quit a job if you think you can get a good reference out of the gig. Oh, absolutely. Um, I don't quit jobs. Actually, I don't think I've quit any of my jobs yet. Um, yeah, no, definitely. Don't quit out of the blue. That burns bridges. In all the situations where I've stopped working for a company, I have written either a letter of resignation or my contract expired, and I would go on to do other things. There is one exception. Yeah, giving good notice is important. You don't want to be burning bridges. Um, yeah, quiet quitting is just like you leave at 5 p.m. when you're supposed to clock out. You leave when you clock out, regardless of if what you were working on that day is finished or not. Because my mentality is 5 o'clock rolls around, I'm heading out. But yeah, I would never just like up and leave a job. There is one exception. There was one security company I worked for that was so bad, they couldn't get me a uniform. The quartermaster, I was working for the company for about a month, 2 months, and the quartermaster still had not gotten a uniform for me. I was doing all my posts in my interview suit. And I'm like, you know what? And they eventually told me, well, you can't be working in your interview suit. And I'm like, well, I gotta be working somehow, and you guys still haven't gotten me a uniform. So we're at an impasse here. I'm gonna go find work elsewhere if this is how it's gonna be. Um, Allied Universal is, as I understand it, because I actually recently reapplied for that company. It seems like that was kind of a one-off incident. Um, the only other company I ever burned a bridge with was Security First, and that was the company. Except, well, no, I don't think I burned a bridge with that one. I just called up the office one day and let them know, hey, I graduated from trade school. I got a job interview from a tech company. It looks like this is goodbye for me, and I'm probably never gonna go back to work for Security First because I've heard they've just been going down the tubes recently. But they were my first employer. Well, technically my second because they were the first employer that I worked for longer than 3 months. When I was fresh out of high school, the summer of it, I get a phone call from my mom, from a friend of my mom's boyfriend, asking if I was looking for work, and I'm like, hell yeah, I am. What do you got for me? And he's like, there's this restaurant. We need someone to bust the tables. I'm like, say no more. I'm in. I only worked there for about 3 months because I was friends with the co-manager, and I think what happened there. That's right. I was told like, hey, we need you to take a break. I'm like, okay, I can do that. They said they'd call me back when they wanted me to come back, and they just never fucking called me.
Did you call them though?
I did. They did not return my calls.
Oh,
Yeah, I was not thrilled about that. That was very poor form on their part. Just leave me expecting like that. Fucking assholes. Um, and then I would remain unemployed for like 2 years, I think, until I got my security guard card and learned about what a cover letter was, thanks to the person I was working with at the time, from the not ILS. I think it was Tailored Day. They're an organization that helps people on the spectrum with just life goals and shit like that. He had actually worked for the company. The guy I was working with worked for the security company before, and in retrospect, Security First takes anyone with a pulse, which I think is partly why they were having problems with retaining personnel. They didn't want to bother to like give their good, competent veterans raises, so the raises walked, and they started taking anyone with a pulse to stop the bleeding, so to speak. Yeah. Oh, Rick, I forget. Have I told you about my time working for the biolab and how and why people joke that I work for Umbrella?
you work for a biolab?
Yeah, okay. So this story is an interesting one. This was when I was working for Allstate Security Services. And what happened here was that I originally worked for them, and I was monitoring a hepatitis A quarantine site. Back when there was a small scale epidemic localized to East County, San Diego, of hepatitis A and B. Um, and the city wanted to contract through this company to monitor the quarantine sites. I posted up in El Cajon, and they actually this is interesting. I started working for them in the weeks leading up to my hospitalization. Oh, thanks for following, old drunk. Um, but yeah, I was I was hospital in like 2 weeks after my started working at the site. I was hospitalized, And thankfully, like, despite me being gone for 3 weeks, because the manager liked me, I got to keep my job. And that site, the responsibilities were way down. I was effectively getting paid to shit post on the internet and play video games. Because my only duties entailed were writing down when someone came to use the portable latrine, and when the city workers came by to clean out the site.
What?
And yeah, it's why that was the Hepe quarantine site in El Cajon. Now, after the contract ended there, they sent me to a biolab up in the Torrey Pines area, and it was it it was something. I got a tour of the facilities. There was a bio waste disposal unit, but there was also a radiation waste disposal unit. Uh, a dumpster in the back of sorts. It looked like a dumpster. It was probably a bit more sophisticated than that because it would have to be for radioactive material. But when I was getting my tour on the first day, the guy is like, "Okay, now don't sit on this, don't lean on it." And I joked, "I'm like, what happens if I sit on it? Am I gonna get ass cancer?" And he gives me this dead look without saying anything. I'm like, "Okay, I won't sit on it then." Um, but because I worked at the quarantine site and then a biolab, it became and because I'm a colossal Resident Evil nerd, it became a running joke among me and my friends that I work for Umbrella.
Uh, would it be funny if, like, after the biolab job, you worked as like for like a military firm to like root out some hazardous equipment from terrorists or something?
Oh, that would be funny as shit. I did almost work for Northrop Grumman.
What was that?
I almost worked for Northrop Grumman, the Air Force development weapons development company.
Oh,
Yeah. Um, my mom had a couple of friends, and her friend's husband worked for them, and her husband got to know me. And he was ex Navy, and he's like, you would be a good fit for this company, I think. He even said I'd be a good fit in the Navy as a nuke, the guy who works with the computers. After watching me play Half Life on his game console and figuring out how to set everything up. Um, and I wrote I sent my resume to Northrop Grumman to apply to work for them. Never heard back from them, but had things played out differently, that would have been a very interesting career path.
oh wow. I wonder
I
if you would.
almost, if I wasn't disabled, I could have been a Marine too. When I was
Wait,
in
you can't.
high school, sorry, what were you about to say?
I was gonna say, like, you can't be a marine if you're autistic.
No, it's more that I can't be a Marine because I have depression and prone to seizures and take medication that knocks me out in the evening. Um, I would be a liability on the battlefield because of those medications that I have to take. When I was in high school, I did 2 terms in ROTC, Marine Corps branch, and I got a call from the recruiting depot one day, and they were interviewing me, asking me all sorts of questions, and they seemed to like the answers I was giving until we got to one in particular question. And he's like, "Are you on any medication for mental illness or any cognitive impairments?" I'm like, "Yes, I am taking X, Y, and Z." And the guy didn't swear, but I could hear it in the way he spoke. He sighed and he's like, "Ah, every soldier has depression, but I get you. I had childhood depression too." Yeah, I could see why you would be struggling with depression in the service or after the service. Um, I was 14 when was I 14 or 15 when I got diagnosed. Um, because I had been planning to off. I had been like considering offing myself. I wasn't getting any enjoyment out of anything anymore. And I talked to my psychiatrist about it. He's like, "Yeah, no, that does sound like textbook depression." Um, but the untreated bipolar disorder. I actually tried to go off my meds. Uh, I didn't go off my meds because of the recruiting depot thing. That came way later in life. Um, that happened when I back in like 2015 or 2016 when I became a security guard and wanted to do armed. And because of the way the laws are written out here, if you're on medication for that alters your brain chemistry, you cannot own or operate a firearm in a public setting, which is why I disagree with that law and believe it does more harm than good. Because I tried to obey the law and it ended in my hospitalization. Had I stayed on my, if I was allowed to purchase my firearm without having to go off my medication, we'd have no issue here.
Hmm.
But recruiting depot guy was like, shit. He was, he let out a sigh of exasperation and said, unfortunately, you're not eligible for the military because you're on these meds. You'd have to be off of them successfully without incident for at least 3 years to become eligible. And I'm like, well, guess I'm not in the military then. But it's interesting to think how very differently my life could have played out if a few things had been different.
Oh, definitely. And it's interesting you mentioned that because I actually read a study somewhere about the military where it was found that like half of all Americans alive today do not qualify for military service. And granted, a lot of it had to do with the fact that so many people are obese or overweight, so it's a weight problem. But I think the mental stuff also plays a role in that as well.
Were they still doing the ASVA B tests when you were in school? In my day, um, no. I think what brought me to the attention of the recruiting depot was the fact that I had enlisted in the Marine Corps ROTC program in my high school, and I had gone from object lesson in what not to do to exemplary cadet in the span of a year. Um, I did 2 rounds in ROTC. The first was to the pronounced as ASVAB. Oh yeah, I've heard of that thing. I think they do it more in like colleges or yeah, they definitely didn't do it in my school, but I've heard of it. I've definitely heard of it before. Um, but yeah, no, I and it's funny. I ended up originally going into ROTC despite a classmate of mine, believe it or not. Female classmate Sahara. Actually, we talked about her earlier. She said I wasn't cut out for it. I wouldn't make it. And I'm like, oh, is that what you think? Let me prove you wrong. And I'll say this: aside from the obvious, there is no motivator more powerful for a teenage boy than spite. Um, the opportunity to prove someone wrong about you. Uh, Now, admittedly, yes, I went in there. I was an object lesson in what not to do. I would break bearing during assembly. I would do and say stupid shit. Um, but in my towards the tail end of that first term, in my junior year, I became an exemplary cadet. Um, and then during my second term in ROTC in the second half of junior year was when I really hit my stride. And on my last day there, I was actually addressed as corporal by my commanding officer, despite not officially holding that rank.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now, for added context, I was a private first class. Um, the way the rank structure goes, it's private first class, lance corporal, and then corporal. That was 2 ranks ahead of where I was. Um, and the reason for this was the ROTC branch was transferring to a different school. Um, Lieutenant Colonel had approached me one day saying, Hackley, this is what's going on. Will you be joining us? And I'm like, as much as I want to, I've got people here that need me. I have friends in the I have friends in the non-ROTC program that still need me here. And he's like, you're a good man, Hackley. Well, actually, he said you're a good man, Charlie Brown, which got a chuckle out of me. But um, had I decided to go with the program to the new school, they would have promoted me to corporal. And as far as I'm aware, there was only ever one other student that had ever been promoted 2 ranks at once, and he was one of the founding cadets of the RTC program at that school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I should have said good grief. Um, all right, what are we at now? Okay, we got about 5 minutes. I think we're gonna start wrapping things up here. I'm getting pretty hungry. I haven't eaten anything since 7 o'clock this morning, and it's now 4 or
Why'd you say
4:30.
anything? Why'd you say anything, my friend?
What? Why did I say what now?
I said, why didn't you say anything?
Because I'm very absent-minded and I don't notice that when I'm hungry until it's like when I'm hungry, it hits all at once. And because I've been
Uh,
eating less lately, I'm starting to not notice when I'm hungry even more. Like I'm at the point where I'm skipping meals. Like I think when did I last have? I didn't have breakfast yesterday, but I had lunch and dinner. Today I didn't have lunch, but I've had breakfast and I'm gonna have dinner. I'm down to 2 meals a day instead of three, and it's working out. I'm losing weight, so
yeah,
must be doing it right.
yeah, that's good. It's actually kind of funny. Your dieting sounds like what happened to me in Nashville. Because when I was in Nashville, I only ate like once a day. But in my case, instead of having lunch, I would just go to a local coffee shop and just get some coffee. Typically a pumpkin spice latte, because he still had those at the time.
Oh no, you're a
I
pumpkin spice boy.
Yeah, you can thank Brett Cooper for that.
Uh,
She and Michael Knowles did a video where they went around Nashville and they tried pumpkin spice lattes, and I go, come on, it can't be that good. So I went to my local Starbucks and I got a pumpkin spice latte, and I shit you not, I actually liked it. Granted, I like the peppermint mocha a lot more, but it honestly was not that bad of a drink. And I'm like, when I go to Nashville, I'm gonna visit as many local coffee shops as I can, just to see other pumpkin spice lattes there. And I think it was a mixed bag. Some were actually pretty good, others were just okay. It was kind of all over the place, but I think it should lined up with like Brett's rankings of the coffee shops, at least the ones I was able to visit, because I was only there for 5 days. So, and I was only really in the city for 4 of those days because the last day was a travel day, so I didn't do much there. But yeah, I just went around and basically had some pumpkin spice.
Holy crap. Old drunk, it's 6 a.m. and you skipped sleep? Oh, you're epileptic. Caffeine is worse than Jeez. Holy crap.
Uh,
That's rough.
Sorry to hear, my friend. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, no, you don't skip sleep. Don't be like teenage Seth. Teenage Seth was skipped sleep often so he could stay up gaming in secret. He was fueled by amphetamines and hatred for his family. You don't want to be like teenage Seth.
Yeah, my younger nephew has the same problem sometimes. Not as nearly as bad as teenage Seth, but like there have been days where like he basically forgot to go to sleep because he was playing Fortnite all night, and by the time he went to bed, it was like 6 in the morning, so I had to go to school.
Jeez. See, when I was in my teens, my average bedtime was like 3 or 4 a.m. And I would wake up at 6, so that should tell you how much. That There was a reason I joke I was fueled on meth and hatred. Because
And
the medication that I took for ADD is is dexmethylphenidate. Notice the meth in there. It's a refined version of methamphetamine. And is should only be taken by people with ADD because that's what it's used to treat. Um, but yeah, no. But of course, I knew that as a teenager, and me having the sense of humor of Beavis and Butthead, I joked that I was fueled by meth and hatred.
yeah, I think for me with coffee, I won't have usually only have 1 cup of Joe a day in the morning, but sometimes when I was in Nashville, I had maybe 2 3 cups depending on the day. And during the time, like I said, I ate a lot less. So I actually ended up losing weight in the process, despite the fact that I didn't exercise at all while I was there. Which is ironic because they had a gym at the hotel I was at, but I didn't go to the gym because I didn't bring any shorts or gym clothes. I also didn't go in the pool either because I didn't bring any swim trunks. So didn't
Yeah.
do either of those things.
See, I'll work out in just about whatever now. Though I used to. I wonder if my old ROTC training gear would still fit me. When I left the ROTC program, I had to return most of my gear that they had assigned to me, namely my camouflage fatigues and my dress blues. But I was allowed to keep my sweatpants and olive T-shirt with the EGA on it. And for the longest time when I was in college, because they still fit me, I would wear that to my PE class or my fitness class, because those were separate classes for some reason. And got a few scant looks from some of my classmates and other people at the college. One guy mistook me for a Green Beret. That was something. I've been mistaken for. Let me tell you, I've been mistaken for a Marine. I've been mistaken for a Green Beret. I've been mistaken for a cop. Now, the military one, I've only ever been mistaken by civvies, or non-cadets. But the cop one, I was mistaken by a cop, by other cops for being a cop. I don't know if I told you the story, but since we got a newcomer here, I'll tell it again anyway. One night I was on my way to work at the RV park where I was a security guard at, and I would take a trolley from SDSU to Old Town. And one night while because I worked the grave shift, while I was commuting, there was a gathering of like 4 or 5 campus police um, around the entrance to the tram station. And they look at me and they're like, "Are you our backup?" And I'm like, "No. Why? Do you need me? Do you need some backup?" And they're like, "Yeah. There's an incident going on right now." And I'm like, "Well, I see you got this police line. I kind of got to get to work. Is it cool if I head down there?" They're like, "Yeah. Just don't mess with anything. Don't mess with anything at the scene." And I'm like, "Okay. Thanks for letting me through, guys." I guess they figured since we were in the same field, that I would respect the crime scene and just get on the tram, which I did. But that was probably the most interesting incident where I was mistaken for a police officer. The only other time it happened was when I was at the was when I was watching someone's car for them while they went on foot to go and talk to the insurance people because their phone was dead. That was an interesting experience. I That day my mom and brother were having a serious argument, and I was just done with their shit. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go to work early and ask my boss if I can just crash on the site, out of sight, until my shift starts. Lo and behold, I met this lady whose car had broken down. It was a nice car, like really nice. I don't know what they were doing there. But I went there and and she's like, can you watch my car until I come back? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. Um, and if you don't know, El Cajon is not a good area. It is meth head central. It's meth head, crackhead, homeless town. Um, it's not a good area to be in. Which is why I say her car was out of place. But I just stood there for like 3 hours, um, and eventually she came back, and I watched her car for her. She's like, "Thank you, officer." I'm like, "Oh, I'm not a cop. I'm just a security guard." Um, and she drove off. The only other time was a few weeks after that incident. I was going to Jack in the Box for dinner before my shift started, um, and the clerk at the counter thought I was a cop. I don't know why that I don't. It's like you've seen the picture of me in my uniform, and yeah, the uniform was convincing. But I guess there's something about me that makes people think I'm what I'm dressed as.
Weren't you sick as a cop by like cop haters once? I think you told me that story.
Yes, yes. Okay, I didn't tell that story yet. Okay, so that was this incident took place back in like 2016 or 2017, right when Black Lives Matter was becoming a thing. I was coming home from work that day. It was about, and I was going to go visit a friend. I got to the neighborhood my friend lives in way earlier than planned, so I'm just like, I'll just go for a walk in the local park. And when this group of teenagers sees me walking and starts heckling me, one of them yells, "Hey, where's your bullets?" I just groaned saying, "Oh God," and then I yelled back to him, "Listen, I'm not a cop. I'm a private security guard. I'm just trying to get to my friend's house. Leave me alone. I'll leave you guys alone. I ain't interested in trouble from you kids." And thankfully they let me be after that. I don't remember if they apologized. I think one of them kind of did that quiet yell, being like, "Sorry, man." Um, I didn't say anything to them. I was so tired from work that I just didn't have the energy to say anything else at that point.
Thank goodness they actually left you alone. Imagine they just started like tackling you or something while you're just walking home.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Um, I I make no secret that I have no love of Black Lives Matter. Um, and you know, I was especially I was especially anti Black Lives Matter when I was a private security guard because to Black Lives Matter, they don't care what the difference is between a private security guard and a cop. You know, there's so much overlap between you and the police, especially when you're in loss prevention like I was. You know, you're the first one getting your ass beat if looting's happening. You don't carry a gun. Shit. In some posts, you're not even allowed to carry a taser or pepper spray. Um, the RV park was actually a post like that. Um, and I was I said, you know what, with all due respect, command, because I had to deal with the office, like not just the RV park office, but the people who ran the company. I said, with all due respect, I'm not listening to that. If I live in a bad part of town, if someone like tries to mug me or do something stupid while I'm commuting to work, I need some way to protect myself. And my life sure as shit ain't worth $8 an hour if some homeless person or meth head at this RV park here decides that I'm worth killing. So I carried a knife on me at that post. And yes, old drunk, I got mistook by a Green Beret, which that baffled even me. I'm like, no, I am not a Green Beret. I'm I did ROTC in high school. The person who mistook me for a Green Beret was another student at the college. Um, I don't know what gave them that impression. I think I didn't even have my head buzzed at the time. I had my hair like it is now. I mean, if my head was buzzed like I did when I was actively in ROTC, I could see why the mistake would be made, but that was fucking nuttier than squirrel shit. Um, but yeah, no, I've been I guess I'm just very convincing when I'm wearing a uniform.
Guess so.
That that was one of the other things I learned as a in security though. Nobody questions your presence if you're wearing a uniform, especially if it's a security uniform. Um, I went to visit school one day after I got off of work because the RV park was right next to the high school I went to,
Hmm.
and what I d- and I stopped by saying how hi to everyone, some of my old teachers. Everyone thought I was a cop because that's what I said I was going to do when I got out of high school, and and my security uniform was very convincing. Rick can attest to that.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
Especially because the badges we had were metal. Um, but I found out that students who had graduated, like post grad students, weren't allowed to come back and visit anymore um, because too many fights were breaking out. Which,
Really? But they
yeah,
did.
between students still attending and post grad students who would come back to visit.
Oh.
Yeah, I Mission Bay High School was a fucking. It was the salty spittoon of middle schools, if you were in Gen Ed. Fights were an everyday occurrence. Um, yeah, everyone jokes about the bathroom at lunch. Let me tell you what happens at the bathroom at lunch in Mission Bay High School. I don't know if it's still going on because it's been like fucking 10 years since I graduated. Um, but back when I was around at Mission Bay, um, you'd have kids playing dice games or gambling in the bathrooms. You'd have kids smoking marijuana, or I think vaping had just become a thing, so the whole vape bathroom hadn't really become a thing yet, except by those on the fringes of that. It was really more marijuana or cigarettes. Um, Never caught anyone drinking. Sadly, there were never any bathroom raves. I've seen TikTok videos where people will, like, pile into the bathroom and start blasting EDM. Uh, Bathroom rave is fucking hilarious, and I love that it's become a meme. Um, but yeah, no, at Mission Bay High School, it was more like the salty spittoon. Welcome to Mission Bay High School. How tough are ya? Um, but because I was in stars, it was a little bit different. Um, I would be lying if I said that I didn't have contempt for the Gen Ed students. Um, I didn't. Normie was not in my vernacular yet, but by God, if it had been, I would have been using it.
Hmm.
Um, Cause so many of the students at Mission Bay High School, they didn't give a shit about getting educated or whatever. They didn't give a damn about their work. And I know because I was in class with some gen ed students. Not all of my classes were in stars. In my junior and senior year, I was actually over the course of my entire high school career, I was slowly integrating more and more into the gen ed classes. By senior year, all my classes were in gen ed, save study hall.
Hmm.
Um, and I only had study hall in the first half of my senior year because I had failed out of stats class because I slept through it the first time I took it.
Hmm.
Um, but chemistry class in particular, I had contempt for most all of the other students. Um, I actually, or no, not chemistry, excuse me, biology. Biology is a funny class for me because I didn't do well in that class because I liked the class. I actually fucking hate biology. It's so boring compared to chemistry or earth science, or even computer science. But I found out that despite not being enthusiastic at all about biology, I was good at it. And the reason I applied myself in biology and took the class seriously is because I felt bad for the teacher. Because literally everyone else in the class was either on their phones completely ignoring the lesson, or talking to someone, or just doing anything that wasn't the assignment or the class. And I just felt so bad for the biology teacher. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to apply myself here in spite of the fact that I am bored witless by biology. It's
Hmm.
one of the weirdest things where I had no interest in the subject, but I was good at it.
Well, I do appreciate that you have the sympathy to do good on behalf of the teacher because it's very easy for a lot of people to just not care about class and just goof around. That could also be part of the reason why so many people just don't understand how things work in the world because, well, A, they're not educated well. B, especially later in life, they grow not to care. I think a lot of that apathy and learning is honestly caused by the school system itself. It just does not foster a positive learning environment. And the thing is, we learn every day. And if you have kids do stuff they're interested in, they'll apply themselves, they'll actually learn, and they'll have fun doing it. I think the problem with the modern school system is it's too rigid, it's too structured. Um, Also, you can find the fact that they're basically not really prioritizing the education fundamentals the way they used to, and they're doing all this weird experimental stuff, and like it's really doing a major disservice to the next generation of kids.
Oh, absolutely. No Child Left Behind was a serious mistake, I think, because that's where a lot of this whole teaching towards that the one test, the Scantron that you do in like the middle of the fucking year every year.
CMP.
Yeah. Um, that was where that spawned from, believe it or not. That's where those tests spawned from. Was the No Child Left Behind Act. Because that if schools got low scores on the ISTQB, they would lose funding. And so they would start teaching to the ISTQB.
Oh, that's absolutely ridiculous, and especially consider the fact that you know, when my statistics teacher was growing up, they would actually, you would not be guaranteed to go to next grade. If you fail to meet certain criteria, you actually have to repeat the school year, no matter how old you were. And I
I thought
think
that
taking
was
that,
a. Oh, yeah, the Scantron originated before that. I was just using the Scantron to describe that one test because
hmm.
that's what I associate it with.
Oh no, I was talking about Scantrons, like the device. I was talking about how
Yeah,
people
no,
used to get held back in school, but like they don't really do it.
I,
Unless you're in high school, that doesn't happen anymore.
yeah, no, I know. It's just that we got old drunk commented the Scantron had originated way before the ISTQB, and so I was clarifying. Yeah, I know it was around long before that. I was just
Oh,
using. It's just that I associate the ISTQB with the Scantron. Cause everyone who's out of school remembers that one test that happens in the middle of the year with the Scantron that you never give a shit about and you aren't actually graded on.
hmm.
I always thought the ISTQB was fucking bullshit. One year, I actually completely sabotaged the ISTQB and answered wrong intentionally because I was just fucking done. Um, and I actually snuck into the pizza party for the people who had taken it seriously and passed and swiped a thing of pizza anyway. I don't look at that as stealing. I look at that as me as throwing a wrench into the system that's fucking bullshit and needs to be torn down.
Honestly, I'm of the opinion that we should just start homeschooling our kids at this point. I'd rather teach the kids myself than have some educator who doesn't respect me do it for me.
Well, I don't know how things are where in Connecticut where you are, but out here there's actually a group getting organized called Parents Reform, or something to that effect. I've donated to them a couple of times, but they want to reform education here in California so that parents are more involved with the school system, and that the school system actually has to do what the parents say, rather than what the teachers' unions say.
I mean, that's what the schools are supposed to be doing in the first place. I don't know how it got to the point where the teachers' organizations and parents are at each other's throats. And it's not just in California. I've been seeing that across the country, and it's a very disturbing trend.
Um, yeah. Well, as you mentioned in, I can't remember if it was in a podcast or in one of our casual conversations, but you mentioned how all the hippies who fucked around in the 60s became the college educators in like the 70s and the 80s. And that's kind of had a trickle down effect. We're starting to see it now affect our grade schools as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, when a grade school teacher's more concerned about whether or not a kid is trans or non-binary and whether or not they're actually good at math, that's a problem.
Right. It just it. I actually knew someone who was LGBTQ. Like they were part of the alphabet mafia, as I like to call them, and when we were in high school together, it was a lobbying group as much as it was a club. It really didn't have any power outside of itself. And when I noticed what was happening in colleges around the time of my around the time, excuse me, that I graduated from high school, and seeing what's happening now, um, I've noticed that it's like this is weird. It's weird how much power this little lobbying group has that started out that up to that point it had only really been a club in schools. It makes me think that this is being funded out from some outside source and being pushed by some outside source or third party.
Yeah, it'd be the most likely culprit. You know, I was in Micah's server the other day, and there's a friend of ours. I can't remember her name. I think her name was like Diva. She's bisexual,
Diva
and
Night Rose Goldsmith, yes.
yes, she was talking about how there's a lot of resentment growing towards the alphabet community, especially amongst the trans folks. And she was talking with some friends, and they're speculating that pretty soon, gay bashing is going to be a thing again, and all the progress they made in the last, I guess, 10, 15 years is going to get undone.
Yeah,
And it's
and
not.
I know that you mentioned earlier if this keeps up and the more radical elements don't like cool their shit and reform, we might see backlash and gay bashing even returning in America.
Yeah, I just mentioned the latter, but a while ago, but that was a few minutes ago actually. But the point, yeah, I will say this: the point I'm trying to make is it's not just the radicals they're gonna go after. They're gonna go after the moderate gays and those type of people who had nothing to do with the stuff in the first place.
Exactly. Exactly. And I wonder if if reform doesn't take place and they just keep pushing this garbage on children, I would say it'd be right that that does happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't be against it. Actually, now that I mentioned this, before this podcast even started, I was watching the latest video from Brett Cooper's channel. It was a new off the clock. She did an episode where she reacted to a debate between trans women and conservative women, and right at the start, um, one of the trans women was talking about how like, oh, we gotta protect the trans kids, ensure they can be trans and stuff, and which we know is silly because there's no such thing as transgender children. It's like being cats; they don't really exist.
Right. A child cannot consent I don't know why this is so hard for people. If a child can't consent to sex, which is absolutely true, children cannot consent. Why would you think that children can consent to gender transitioning.
I don't know
Fucking
what.
idiots.
Why? I mean, why don't you ask Vanderbilt? I mean, I don't know if you remember the Vanderbilt situation, but like, yeah, they were basically making tens of thousands off like gender surgeries and stuff. They had a whole rally back in October. I think Matt. It was also like Matt Walsh, oddly enough. They had a whole rally to protest the gender clinic at Vanderbilt. Yeah, that was like back in October, I believe. But like, it attracted like tens of thousands of people. It was a huge thing.
Wait, so did Matt Walsh actually get something right for once?
Yeah, I will say this. I will say this. I'm not a fan of Matt Walsh. I think a lot of my beefs with Matt Walsh are mainly with like his take on the yards. I think they're kind of silly. But I will give him credit on this though. The one thing he has consistently gotten right is lobbying against the trans lobby in regards to the transing of young children. In fact, I don't know if you've ever seen What is the Woman,
I
but
have not, but
I
I've heard of it.
yeah, and funnily enough, the movie's actually not really about the definition of a woman. It's actually about how these gender clinics like Vanderbilt have been essentially transing young kids um, out of like it's because they think it's like to quote the right thing to do, how there's a lot of profit involved, and he basically really laid down. I haven't seen it myself. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. He basically laid down how this has been a thing for the last couple of years, and now they gotta like go against it because naturally they're putting kids in danger. Like with the HRTs and the hormones and stuff, a lot of stuff's irreversible damage.
Oh
And
yeah, no, and it does increase your chances of getting cancer too.
oh, absolutely, absolutely, not mention that. And well, going back to that video, the reason I bring up this recent episode, which just came out like I think an hour before we started this episode, actually before at least it was the podcast for this whole thing, is because the episode basically ends with that same person who brought the trans kids in the beginning, ending with how all these like Christians, they always make excuses about like how trans people can't be trans or things like that. And then Brett ends on a really solid point. I really like to go. Why is it that it's okay for trans people to think the way they do, but when people like Christians disagree with you, you have a problem with it? And Brett herself is not a Christian, at least not yet. But she says like they have the right to think what they want. They're firm in their beliefs, and they should have the right to think what they want. And that's not me them being a bigot. That's just how they see the world, and that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, definitely. I've the people who preach about how intolerant Christians are, I've often found that they are projecting that their own intolerance onto others.
Yeah,
Like
so
they're accusing us of the thing they themselves are guilty of.
dude, you just described the modern left wing in America.
It goes without saying, which is why I didn't mention it.
Oh,
But yeah, it's about 5 o'clock now, so I say we wrap it up. Old drunk, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for putting up with our bullshit. Um, ultimately yeah, yeah. And my dad's also a leftist, and some of my coworkers at work, they're leftist too. But we can have a civilized discussion because we all realize that we want the same thing. We just have different ideas of how to get there.
yeah,
Um,
it always makes me happy when I see a left-leaning person express common sense because unfortunately that's very uncommon on that side. So whenever I see it, I just want to congratulate. So Ultra, thank you for your perspective. Really great to hear that, and glad to see there's more folks like you out there.
yeah, and hope to see you around in some of my other streams. It's always good to see people in the chat. It's become uncommon. Yeah, no. I don't know if you're familiar with Styx Hexenhammer. I don't watch him as much as I used to, but he did a great video on what he called the death of the center, where as political paradigms begin to collapse, the center tries to suppress new parties that are set to replace them, and in so doing, it radicalizes both sides until they grow increasingly fervorous. A great example can be seen in what happened in Weimar Germany, where the Weimar government would actually spy on both the communist and Nazi parties, and in spite of the persecution of these two parties, the communists and the Nazis, they still rose to prominence because the center became less and less popular with the average individual because it was growing inept and unable to solve their problems. I'm hoping that we in America can avoid this and kind of come and help things simmer down and get civilized again. Maybe you'll see more political segments from me and Rick, and in addition to our already existing podcast where we do faith, because the political thing that was just a spur of the moment decision, where we talked about culture and politics. I know that Micah and Hatman, the guys who me and Rick watch, that kind of inspired this sort of segment, haven't been doing their thing as much anymore. And that was originally why I was watching them. They stopped doing that for mental health, and politics makes everyone miserable. But some people just have better takes than others, and I feel like we're kind of filling in a gap doing this, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, maybe we should consider doing a separate podcast for a topic like this on politics and culture. I think that'd be a nice show to do.
Maybe we will. Maybe we will.
Like
Um,
especially to keep it separate from the faith-based stuff. That's dealing with the word of God there. I don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, I don't want to entangle. We definitely have to keep that a separate entity. These two things gotta stay separate. Um, but I'll say this: I'll definitely keep doing. I know for a fact I'm gonna keep doing the game and VTubing and the faith stuff. Um, but it'll be interesting to see how everything develops and turns out. I'm gonna head out now.
All right. See you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. See you around.